tires look really nice.
I bet they do. Anyways, welcome back to another video, everyone. As you can see, I'm at Chris's shop already, the only place I work on cars these days. I like to show up, make a mess, half-ass clean it, and bounce. That's what happened last time, actually. But you can't see it. Miata's just off frame over there. I do have not a complete cooling system upgrade because I don't have like a coolant reroute, which is something very much needed for a 1.6 if you're going to boost it or do any track racing. But I do have what you'd call a budget setup. I got an eBay Radiator, name brand eBay, which is Mishimoto, fan shroud, and actually this right here, a little standalone wiring kit for it because 1.6 wiring harnesses are pretty small and they're 33 years old, so they struggle to deliver enough power for things, and I feel like the stock system won't efficiently handle two fans. So, and the factory wiring for the secondary fan is gone, so got that to wired it up, standalone. All right, now I'm just waiting for the cooling system to cool down because obviously I drove the car here, disassemble it, and I'll try to record as much as I can, but it's Arizona, it's hot. My phone will probably just overheat and shut off anyways. It's something I have to fight every summer. But I guess we'll see in the next clip when hopefully I'm taking the stock Radiator out. So I guess we'll find out. So, at the front of the car, as you can see, I disconnected the upper and lower hose and dumped out all of the coolant I had in here. So now I'm just going to be taking the radiator out. On a Miata, it is super easy. It's easier if you put the headlights up. You got one bolt here, and then it just slides onto two brackets down there. And that's it. You just take these off, and then you can slide the whole radiator up. So I'll show that in a second. I probably should have just grabbed the electric ratchet.
Probably.
I'm so used to just not having fancy tools, and so I resort to caveman tools immediately. All right, well, I tried to record it, but my phone got hot like I said it would, and didn't save. So I got the radiator out. Luckily on Miatas, it's very easy. You have right here and here, just two bolts, and then it just slides onto these little hooks down here. They are on these side rails on a Miata. Now, when you do these aluminum dual cores, these rails are removable, but you actually don't end up using them on those. You pop off this little C-clip, and the whole little bracket, what would you call this? Like the mount will slide off. Yeah, it's like a little mount with the rubber grommet on the end, isolator. And then they just have these welded on to where you just slide it through here. Also, if you're getting one of the eBay ones, they usually always come slightly bent, especially this. So I have a little bit of bending of metal to do. Swap over that bracket. I only have the one. My car never came with the second one. But then I'll be ready to mount this in place with the fan shroud. And hope it fits with my big old intake, but it should. Alright, so he got the tabs welded down lower and in place, but I gotta have to have Antoine take me to the store because I need washers. Because these bolts I got are slightly too long. They actually go a little further than that. So I gotta get something to space that. I might also get shorter bolts, see if the Ace has some shorter ones. These are M8 by 1.0 by 20 mil, and I'm gonna go to a different Ace and see if they have M8 by 1.0 by 16 mil. That way their length is a little more correct. Thanks, Chris. Well, lost a couple of minutes, but I am back from the store. Got my new bolts and some washers. So these ones are a little bit shorter, and with a washer they should fit perfectly. I can't really put this on too tight because I gotta put the fans back on, but there we go. So I can get it to fully seat. So these will work out perfectly. So I am going to put the fans back on the shroud and then get back to the front of the car to put the radiator and fan in there. Alright, well, after a bunch of finagling, honestly, and struggling, the radiator is in, along with the fan setup. Obviously, I still have to wire it, but I'll record all of that. That said, honestly, it is not worth it to get one of these, like, ultra cheap eBay radiators. I listened to a bunch of Miata people who are like, oh, just get the eBay one and a dual fan setup, like, you'll be good. Wasn't even on my post. I happened to have just seen somebody post the same thing that they wanted to do. not worth it. Get something a little bit nicer. I'm not saying go out and get like the most expensive thing you can find, but a nicer fan or a nicer radiator setup at least. And honestly, not Mishimoto. They get a lot of their cores from eBay, so it's like eBay quality, but with a name on it. So I'm talking like Koyo Red, Flying Miata setup, something like that. Just something nicer. Something else I got to deal with is trimming these hoses, because the outlets definitely stick out a lot further. So like, you guys can see if I try to put this on, actually I may be able to just get it on and slip it on. I'll do the little fit and finishing parts right now off camera because it's boring just hooking up hoses and stuff. And then I'll start figuring out how I'm going to do the wiring and show that to you guys. So when doing one of these little fan switches, it does come with a thermal switch, or one of these fan wiring kits. It does come with the thermal switch, and I can tell you now that does not thread into the thermostat right here. And one of the reasons I'm not using the stock sensor is because, as you can see, mine's broken, which is probably pretty common. These are just plastic, like the body part where the plug goes. So I'm just going to remove this. And I got thread adapters for these. And I believe they're in the passenger seat of the car. So I just picked these up at AutoZone. I believe there's one in here that's like an M16 by 1.0, and then it comes with this little crush washer to seal. The factory sensor uses an O-ring, and I do have an O-ring kit in the car, so I'll probably use that, but I'm going to find out which one of these will work, if any, and go on from there. If not, I'll order a sensor that'll work in there and plug in the kit, but that just means until it gets here, I won't really have fans set up the way I want. I'll have to just hardwire them and then have it on a switch instead of have it automatically kick on and off. Well, after taking this off the adapter, which I'm going to use big air quotes, the M16 by 1.5 does thread into here, they're into the stock location. The problem is, it's not an adapter. It's almost just like an extension, because the stock M16 by 1.5 thermal switch also threads into it. So it doesn't actually adapt the threads. So I did find, I'll have to order just a new like OE style, fuck, I keep dropping it. A new OE style thermal switch, and then I found just the connector, and I'll make just, I'll pin the connector and then wire it just into this kit. Until then, I'm gonna wire up the rest of the kit. It just won't actually function. It won't serve a purpose. Just like this, will not serve a purpose other than to just be a plug for this. That way it doesn't leak while I wait for parts to come in. It honestly really sucks because I did get this adapter kit ahead of time, hoping it would work, but it doesn't. So I'm gonna figure out how to do the rest of this and give you guys a little update once I figure it out. Okay, so working with the fan wiring kit, I found a location that I like. Luckily I had the bolt because I bought it earlier for the radiator, ended up using a different one, and made sure that the relay does fit without interfering with the bolt head. If not, I'll just get a different type of bolt. But as you see, the relay goes in perfectly fine right there. Used an OEM location, so I didn't have to drill a hole or anything. And then while reading the instructions here and looking, just in case any of you guys need it for a different kit, or maybe you're wiring one up yourself, this, plus it comes with written instructions on the other side. I have figured out how I want to run this. Some wires I have to extend, some I have to shorten. For starters, it comes with a short red wire that goes to the positive on your fans. I want to kind of run that under the headlight, and then it will connect to, this is my hot right here, the blue. So it will go down here, somewhere like that. I'll connect them. I have to cut off this bullet connector and use one of the blade connectors, or maybe just get a female bullet connector end and put it on the red wire. And then the black wire goes to thermal switch. So that would go there. I have to obviously get a thermal switch, which really sucks. Again, looking at the diagram, black wire to thermostat, which means you also just ground the fans on any ground you have under here. I already have a ground connected to that brown, but I'm going to end up redoing that because that wire's gotten like hard over the years, but I like to ground it right there. And then it comes with this circuit breaker. This is essentially a fuse, but what happens is when this blows, it will reset itself after a certain amount of time. That's going to go in between your constant 12 volt and the long red wire on this kit. It's long, they shorten it, long and short wire. So it's going to go in between both this and the brown wire. I'm going to run into the cabin because brown will go to either a switch or a separate switch that you want, or a switched 12 volt, so ignition. But you still need this to go in between. Obviously you want yours to be fused and relayed and everything to be safe and protected in that way. So I'm going to work on actually getting connectors put on and set up correctly. So I will see you guys when I see you, however much progress I make when I decide I need to record again, and just try to figure this stuff out. I'm not the best at wiring. I do like doing it, or I like figuring it out, but again, not that great at it. So this is definitely some good practice for me. All right, well, update on the wiring is I found where I want to put the breaker. It's going to be right here, self-tapered under the cowl. And then I don't know if this is a hole that's supposed to be here, maybe a previous owner drilled it, but I got the constant 12 volt and the switch 12 volt ran in there, currently under here. And again, this is definitely something one of the previous owners did. Here's a constant 12 volt connection right here. So I'm going to end up crimping a blade connector on and a blade connector on here, attaching those, and then taking a multimeter and can't get the ignition unclipped. Go through here, look at that, tried catching on fire one time. I forgot about that. Going through here and trying to find out which one of these is a switched 12 volt. Obviously not on the connector because I have no way of switching, but just showing you like one of these connectors coming off of the ignition switch right there. Find out which one of those is switched and tap this into it. If not, there's also the fuse panel down here, wherever the hell it is. I can't see it. I believe it's on the driver's side, and my flashlight's not on. So there should be a fuse panel down here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. It's like way up here. I'm pretty sure you can't see it. Not go on the fuse panel right here, find out which one of those is a switch 12 volt. And that will have the 12 volt connections finished up. Not too difficult. I'm starting to think the switch 12 volt is if you run this system in a constant ground, then the brown wire will bypass the need for the thermal switch. So I believe the way this works is you have the constant, you have to the fan, then you have the ground connection. No, you got to ground through. I don't know exactly how this works. I'm just doing as the instructions say. But I do know how to rig this up to where both fans will come on when I turn the ignition on. But I know there's a way where even when you have the thermal switch set up, you can bypass that. Okay, so running, now I get it. Okay, so I believe if you run the brown or the 12 volt switch, it will bypass and send 12 volts to the fan directly. It will directly power the fan. So internally, the brown wire is connected to here, the 12 volt to the fan. Let me restart this sentence. So the way this normally works is you have your constant 12 volt, and then you have your 12 volt output to the fans. And when it detects a ground connection, it sends the power through, which the ground would come from the thermal switch. But you have a bypass for that, and that's the brown wire. So if you send 12 volts here, it'll just go straight to the fans. It'll bypass the whole ground connection. So I believe if I set up the brown wire, I can bypass that. So I might get a switch, that way I have a manual bypass if I ever need to. Maybe the thermal switch goes bad in the future. Or in this instance, I don't have a thermal switch. I could bypass that and still run the fans without having the thermal switch. Now, I do really want the thermal switch because sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, I will sit there and be idling and I'll forget to turn on the fans. Back when this system was on a fan switch when I first bought the car, I did that multiple times, which I later on stopped doing that because obviously I got used to it and remembered to turn on the fans. But I just like the idea of having it automatically do it, kind of like an OEM setup, just with beefy fans. But I am figuring out the wiring. It's actually not too difficult. I'll try to link this kit specifically, that way you get one that does come with instructions. This is honestly pretty rare. Usually when you're buying unbranded or like stuff off Amazon, eBay, and this was like $20 for the kit, you don't get instructions. You might get like a diagram, but this has written instructions and they're overall written well. There's very few typos, so I'm actually surprised. So I'm gonna try to link this exact kit, that way you guys can make sure like you have instructions with it. But I'm gonna keep working away. I'm probably gonna do the terminals on that and connect it to the constant 12 volt and figure out what I'm gonna be doing from there. Probably connecting the hot to the fans, which means figuring out if I'm gonna cut this bullet connector off or put a bullet connector on here. But if I take this here ground connection, yeah, and that is through a technically fused and relayed harness. So that's cool. So now I do know that everything I've done works. I just have to get a thermal switch for there. And a regular switch for the inside so I can have the bypass working in case I want it to be. Does this work as a grounder here? That does. Well, at least I got part of it figured out. Well, everyone, I think I'm gonna end this video here. As you can see, we got the radiator in, the car on, putting coolant in it. Fans are currently running. We got it just rigged up until I can get the thermal switch in a way where I can turn them on and off, just with a little clamp on the negative. But these fans pull a ton of air. They actually cause the engine to idle down with how much they pull, probably because the tiny alternator not really being able to keep up too well. So if I add any more electronics here, I'll have to look into an alternator upgrade. But that'll be a video for a later date. If you guys enjoyed the video, thank you, I appreciate it. If you want to see more, please subscribe, and I will see you guys all in the next one.